I'm looking at your shirt, and you got Betty D's on it. We're in Betty D's studio. Tell us, what's the story behind Betty D's studio?
Yeah, definitely. So Betty D was my grandma. She passed away in August of 21. And that was really a time frame when we were like going into like, what is this thing? This is more than real estate. We're gonna have to separate these two off. In October of that year, I'm grieving. The world's a hot mess in general. You watch the news and we're divided as a whole. My family's divided through grief. And I'm driving down 53 and I'm thinking about the podcast studio and thinking about the name piece of it too. Like, what are we going to name it? Is it going to be Love Local Studio? Is it going to be this? And then all of a sudden I saw a billboard with Betty Boop, which my grandma's friends would call her Betty Boop back in the day. I was like a little kid, and her friends would be like, Betty Boop, Betty Boop. And then, so I took that as a sign, and I was home that night, and I didn't tell Carrie that piece of it at all. And at that time, I'm like, oh, Betty Boop Studio, kind of thinking. Through that creative process, I learned, well, that's not going to work. Trademark issues, copywriting, blah, blah, blah. Just continue to work through it, not telling Carrie anything. I'm just sitting there thinking. She picks up her phone. She goes, look, Betty Boop. And I never said anything about Betty Boop. I never told her that story. And she knew that meant something to my grandma. And at that time, I'm like, well, like, I'm gonna cuss again. Holy shit! Like Betty, Betty, we're just gonna call it Betty D's studio. Like Betty Boop isn't gonna work, and it kind of just all came together. And I look back on that time and why that came into place, and what I was working through at that time. How we're talking right now, if our world could talk like that, if both sides of the table could talk like this from the left and from the right, or from families that are divided, if they could truly talk to each other, empathize with each other, show vulnerability, and allow one another grace, because especially with grief, it's really, really a tough emotion.
Yeah.
That if we could talk through it, we could get through anything.